Hello, and welcome to Book Circle. I'm Earl Weinberg. This time, we will continue our reading of Summer at Fairacre by Miss Reed. Chapter 11. Amy's Party. I was sad to see the last of May, despite the problems it had brought me. Would June ever be as glorious, as fragrant, as tender with new blossoms everywhere? Fairacre delights me in all seasons, but May is the crown of the year for me, and when exceptionally early warmth is added to its blessings, then everything is perfect in this upland village. However, the weather forecaster on the last evening of May promised us a continuation of the balmy conditions, and the weather map was nicely sprinkled with high-pressure areas and isobars widely apart foretelling very light winds. And it looked as though he would be right. I woke on the Saturday morning to a cloudless sky and spent a few luxurious minutes relishing the fact that I need not get up at my usual early hour. A robin was singing in the plum tree, and there were occasional chirrupings from foraging blackbirds. But the rapturous dawn chorus of some weeks earlier was fading now that the young birds were hatching and fledglings needed feeding. A sudden furious chattering and scolding fetched me from my bed, and, as I had guessed, Tibby was looking up at an irate blackbird a few feet above him in the lilac bush. As I soaked in my bath a few minutes later, I thought how lucky I was to have a bathroom to myself and hot water at the turn of a tap. It was not always so. I recalled the effort of dragging the zinc bath from its nail on the side of the woodshed, boiling the rainwater in an old copper, and the sloshing of buckets into the bath. It had been hard work, but the water, brownish and silky, had left one's skin as smooth as satin, and the soap had lathered in half the time it took the water from the mains. Nevertheless, I told myself as I stepped out, I would not want to return to the primitive sanitary conditions of my early years at Fairacre, and I praised the Lord for mercies received. That evening I was due at Amy's party, and I donned my new pale green silk frock with some trepidation. Amy has an eagle eye for the cut and color of garments, and although I flattered myself that the color suited me, I was not too sure about the sleeves. They seemed rather tight at the top to me. No doubt Amy would tell me if anything was drastically wrong when we were alone together. The sun was still quite high as I drove to Bent, slanting rays through the young foliage and dappling the road surface with sunlight and shade. Within a mile of Amy's house, I recognized the car in front of me as David and Irene Mons, and saw that Horace Umbleditch, Irene's brother, was also with them. They did not see me. I slowed down to let them get ahead. It was quite a change to realize that I was not first as usual. Amy tells me that it looks as though I don't get enough to eat and have rushed ahead to get my trotters in the trough first. I thought these porcine allusions were very rude, and I told her so. "Well, I apologize," she had replied, "but it doesn't alter the fact that as soon as you enter the hall, you raise your head and sniff the air ravenously, like a Bisto kid." "I wonder I get invited at all," I answered. "Anyway, it's because there are usually such luscious smells drifting about that I automatically respond." This time, I told myself, watching the Mons car drive ahead of me, I must remember my manners and try not to sniff. James let me in. He looked as debonair as ever, but I thought he seemed a little more subdued than usual. However, he kissed me on both cheeks gallantly and led me toward the party. I was pleased to find several people already gathered together in Amy's splendid drawing room. The French windows were open, and some of the guests, glasses in hand, were watching a little bevy of chaffinches splashing in the bird bath. Roses seemed to be everywhere, inside and out, and their perfume was marvelous. Most of the people were old friends, but I was glad to meet Amy's new young vicar and his wife. They had only recently moved to Bent from a parish in North London and were enthusiastic about country life. There was also an elderly cousin of Amy's, recently widowed, who was staying for a week. Luckily, I remembered that she was a fairly well-known writer of detective novels, and we had plenty to talk about when we found ourselves on the same sofa. "Do you know Basil Bradley?" I asked her. "He writes historical novels and lives near here." "We share the same publisher. Now, he is really an enormous success. I believe they print 10,000 copies at first go." She spoke with awe. "I once tried to analyze his great hold on the public, but I came to the conclusion that it could not be true literary worth. That may sound catty, but I don't mean to be. His style is rather florid, I think." "I think he gives his readers exactly what they want," I replied. "They only have to look at the book jacket and see one of his heroines, all ringlets and a high-waisted muslin gown, to know that she is going to have wild romances every 10 pages, and lots of wicked villains hoping to deflower her, and probably a cruel guardian into the bargain, and a few ghosts in the background. And it's all going to be the mixture as before, and very nice, too." "I don't begrudge him his popularity for a moment," she said bravely, "but it would be nice to know his secret. Have you met him?" "Frequently. He's a perfect dear, and we all love him. He opens bazaars and empties jars of coins in pubs at Christmas, and generally pulls his weight most satisfactorily. What's more, he's as modest as they come." "Really? Well, it's nice to know that he is as popular in private as in public." She sounded rather wistful, and I wondered if she had hoped for some terrible secret vices to be disclosed, but I was unable to gratify her. "Basil Bradley is exactly as I described him, and although the men locally tend to make disparaging remarks about his pink shirts and bow ties and his rather too gorgeous silk suits and pastel shades, we women uphold him loyally, always ending with, 'And he's so very kind to his mother.' On the whole, this tends to be the last word on our dear Basil Bradley, and what's wrong with that?" At this moment, Gerald Baker was ushered in by James, and after introductions around the room, he arrived at the sofa. Mrs. Hare, Amy's cousin, had been collected by the vicar and his wife to go and inspect the garden, so he sat by me and I inquired about Aloysius, our local Victorian poet. "It's really rather exciting," said Gerald. "We shall be coming out to Fairacre pretty soon to film Tyler's Row, where he lived." "Do the Hales know?" "Oh, I expect so," he said somewhat vaguely. "The producer's a very conscientious young fellow." "Will they keep pretty closely to your script?" "I'm not doing that." He sounded taken aback. "There are 3, maybe 4 chaps doing the writing. You need a large team for a half hour on the telly, you know." It sounded extravagant to me, especially as I had read Gerald's excellent and masterly account of Aloysius' life and work. I should have thought anyone could have knocked a script into shape with some of Aloysius' regrettably flowery poems interspersed to make up the time. "I suppose it makes work," was the best I could do by way of comment. We strolled out into the garden with the others. The sun was going down fast behind a clump of beeches in the distance. Against a south-facing wall there were already some scarlet flowers on the japonica, glowing even more brilliantly in the rays of the setting sun. Horace Umbleditch appeared at our side. "My sister Irene makes the most marvelous japonica jelly," he said to Gerald. "We have it with cold meat. Delicious." "Japonica jelly!" exclaimed Gerald. "Now that sounds exactly suitable for the name of a film star, don't you think? Or one of Aloysius's poems, perhaps?" "Far too obvious," observed Gerald. "Aloysius likes such titles as The Winnowed Seed and The Bashful Maiden. Oh, but look, Amy is calling us to heel." The vicar was on Amy's right, and I was next to him. On my right was Horace, whom I always enjoy meeting. He teaches at the local prep school, and his first words at the dinner table were surprising. "I thought you were an excellent speaker at that children's do a month or so ago." "Good heavens, were you there? I didn't see you. Come to think of it, I really saw nobody. I was so terrified. Just a pinkish splodge of mixed faces, a horrifying sight." "Well, we enjoyed it. I brought along our new school secretary, Eve Masters. You must meet her sometime." I said that I should like that, and wondered privately why Horace should choose such a dreary outing for the poor woman. As if he knew my thoughts, Horace said, "Her uncle is a big noise in the Save the Children business. It was her idea to go to the Caxley evening. To be honest, I wanted to go to the Marx Brothers revival." "I wish I'd seen you. Did you linger after the show and have some refreshments?" "We had to get away fairly early, as one of the chaps on the staff was standing in for me until 10 o'clock, and I didn't want to be too late back. But we heard Miss Crabbe." "Oh, good," I said politely. "What a misguided old fathead she is," observed Horace, turning over the delicious chicken in a creamy sauce, which was our main course. "She'd have been burnt as a witch 200 years ago." I found myself feeling fonder of Horace than ever. What a wonderfully perceptive fellow he was, to be sure. "Well, she was warmly applauded," I replied, trying to be fair. "That was only general rejoicing at the cessation of the lady's voice," Horace assured me, and turned to talk to Amy's cousin beside him. "I've met Gerald Partridge of Fairacre this week," said the vicar. "What a charming fellow. Tell me, does he let the children address him by his Christian name?" "Oh, good heavens, no," I exclaimed. "I shouldn't allow it for one thing, and I don't think it's respectful, do you?" "Respectful," repeated the young man doubtfully. "I was not so much thinking of respect as of friendliness. I wonder if the children of Bent would like to call me Cyril." "Well, that's your affair," I answered, trying not to sound too shocked. "I only know that I should never dream of letting them use my Christian name. They don't seem to suffer any terrible traumas by having to address me as Miss Reed. What did you do about the problem in your last parish?" "I'm afraid the children there were rather impudent, and some of them took advantage of my goodwill." I was suddenly very sorry for him. "Well, if you'll take an old schoolmarm's advice, I'd say remember that children on the whole are impudent and will take advantage of gentleness. Time enough to indulge them when you know you can control them, but they soon get the upper hand if you are not firm from the beginning." "You are probably right," he said, looking downcast. "This is fresh fruit salad," announced Amy, lifting the lid top from a beautiful scooped-out cantaloupe melon. "Or James can give you chocolate mousse if you prefer it." The vicar cheered up at once, I was relieved to see. Food is a great comfort in times of stress. As we were going to our cars at the end of the evening, James caught me alone as I was about to drive off. "I'm sorry I was so brusque with you on the telephone the other evening. I was worried to death, as I'm sure you knew." "Of course, James. I was feeling just the same. I think Amy's little break has done her good, don't you?" "Funny affair, really. After all, she has everything she can want here. It seems so odd to push off into the blue like that. I can only think it was a slight mental breakdown." I felt a twinge of irritation. Was he really so obtuse, or was he trying to square his conscience? "She told me," I said, "that she simply wanted to be herself, to be her own person, with no ties of any sort. I can understand it." James studied his fingers on the edge of the car window. He looked thoughtful. James is no fool, and I was wondering how he would react. "I do love her, you know," he said at last, very seriously. "I don't doubt it for a minute," I told him truthfully, "and she's equally devoted to you. But no matter how happily people are married, they are still individuals, and have to have time now and again to realize it." "Yes, that's a point to bear in mind." "Dear old Don," I said, watching Amy waving to a departing car, "stressed that no man is an island, and so on. But I think each man is an island, and no one knows his neighbor completely. That's what's so shattering when someone we think we know does something horrifying, like stealing or committing suicide." James laughed suddenly. "Do you want me to have night terrors? No more sermons now, or I'll burst into tears." He gave me a kiss through the window and ruffled my hair as though he were my big brother. "Goodbye, James, and thank you," I cried, moving off. "Thank you for casting pearls," he replied cheekily. Trust James to have the last word. It was quite apparent that Mrs. Pringle was not going to come again to clean my house, and so I felt free to accept Isabel's kind offer to approach the lady who lived between Fairacre and Beech Green. "Just to see if she's willing," I said, "and I'll pop along after school one day or at any time that suits her to arrange things." Isabel was as good as her word, and 2 days later I found myself sitting in the little Mrs. John's kitchen watching her spoon custard into her youngest's mouth. She was small and neat, with quick movements and bright dark eyes. She reminded me of a wren or a robin. "You wouldn't mind if I brought Teresa with me, I suppose?" she asked tentatively. I assured her that Teresa would be very welcome. If she liked, I added, she could play with some toys with the babies' class. This seemed to clinch the matter, and it was arranged that the two of them would come on Wednesday afternoons, and a satisfactory wage was negotiated. Then a thought struck me. "You will have to push Teresa in the pram, won't you? It's a good 1.5 miles. Can you manage it? Suppose it rains?" Mrs. John laughed. "I sometimes push her to Caxley," she replied. "Not often, I grant you, but I enjoy walking, and when I was a child in Wales we walked everywhere." "If the weather is really bad," I insisted, "you mustn't venture out. I shall understand." "I'll be there," she promised, and I felt pretty sure she would be. By the end of the week, the school was looking grubby despite all our endeavors at self-help. Curmudgeon though she was, and a sore trial at times, Mrs. Pringle was a first-class cleaner, and the school missed the touch of her heavy hand. On the following Saturday, she arrived at my house, and I invited her in. "No, I'm not stopping," she replied. "At least sit with me in the garden," I said, making for the rustic seat. "It will rest your leg before you go back." She lowered herself slowly and sighed as she came to rest. "Well, the doctor says my leg's no better and forbids me to work," she told me with evident relish. I was not surprised. "That settles it then," I said. "I'll advertise at once for someone to take over. Does this mean you will be retiring for good?" She drew in her breath sharply. "Who said for good?" she demanded. "I'm not giving in my notice and stopping for good for anyone. It's just while my leg's flared up. I told the doctor that." "In that case," I said, "we shall have to advertise for temporary help." "No need to waste money on advertising," said the lady. "My Minnie'd give a hand while I'm laid up. That house of yours could do with a bottoming by now, as well as the school, I don't doubt." I explained with secret pleasure, I must admit, that Mrs. John had been engaged for my work. Mrs. Pringle bridled. "And who might she be? You'd better warn her about the weight of that spare bed of yours and the way the bath tap comes apart if you aren't careful. Poor soul, whoever she is, she'll find plenty to do." I explained who she was and mentioned young Teresa. Mrs. Pringle shook her head gloomily. 10 to 1 she'll put her fingers in the electric sockets, she warned me, and play with the switches. And you'll find finger marks all over the place, no matter how careful this lady is. We knows children, Miss Reed. You'll rue the day, I've no doubt. She rose to her feet. "Well, I must struggle back, leg or no leg. Shall I tell Minnie to come up?" Panic enveloped me. I thought of the state of the school wash basins and the floor of the infants' room. I also thought of the time it would take for the advertisement to be answered, and wondered if hopeless Minnie might just possibly be of use for the next few days. I took the plunge. "Yes, ask Minnie to come and have a look at the work. Make it clear to her it will only be for a day or two until we get someone to take your place." "She'll have to bring her youngest with her," said Mrs. Pringle. "But if you're having that Teresa, I suppose you won't mind a toddler under your feet." "Take care of your leg," I said in farewell. "I'm the only one that does," she replied bleakly. I returned to the garden seat and pondered on the future. The thought of Minnie, toddler or no toddler in tow, was daunting, but surely she could not do much damage to the basins with a tin of vim and a washcloth. It might be wise to supervise the scrubbing of the infant's room floor, I told myself. Minnie was quite capable of shaking Harpic into the hot water instead of soap powder, as she could not read, and any white powder would seem suitable to her. I'd better make sure all the cupboards were locked, I decided. On one never-to-be-forgotten occasion, she had decided to wash the shelves of the stationery cupboard and had put back all the exercise books, colored tissue paper, gummed squares, and cartridge paper on the wet shelves, with disastrous results. As for the sacrosanct register, which all teachers are supposed to guard with their lives, snatching it from any fire which may be engulfing the school, I thought it would be prudent to take it across the playground every night to my house while Minnie was at her mayhem. Tibby appeared from the clump of clove pinks, a mouse dangling from his mouth. Seeing me, he gave a triumphant mew. The mouse, having been dropped, beat a rapid retreat, pursued in vain by Tibby. 2 minutes later he returned, lamenting loudly. "Cheer up, Tib," I said. "We all have our troubles." And we'll have a look at the troubles next time.